My name is Sloane Mitchell, I'm 28, and last Saturday should have been the happiest day of my year. Instead, it became the day I discovered my entire family had been living a lie for months. As I stood in my beautifully decorated living room, surrounded by friends celebrating my birthday, my phone buzzed with a text from my parents. "Sorry, honey, can't make it tonight. We're visiting your brother Jake's new apartment across town." The problem: Jake had supposedly been traveling for work for 6 months. But there he was, apparently living in some mystery apartment while I'd been sending him care packages to his temporary hotel. That text unraveled everything. Before we dive into this mess of family betrayal and the sweet revenge that followed, I need to ask, where are you watching from? This story gets wild, so if you're here for some serious family drama karma, hit that like button and subscribe, because this journey is just getting started. And trust me, you'll want to see how this all plays out. For 28 years, I'd been the golden child. Straight A's through college, graduated summa cum laude, landed my dream job at a prestigious marketing firm in downtown Chicago. While my older brother Jake bounced between jobs and relationships, I was the responsible one who called home every Sunday, remembered every birthday, and organized family holidays. My parents, Linda and Robert Mitchell, never missed an opportunity to brag about their successful daughter to anyone who'd listen. They'd beam with pride at neighborhood barbecues, telling stories about my latest promotion or the campaign I'd just launched for a Fortune 500 client. Meanwhile, Jake was always finding himself or exploring new opportunities, code words for being unemployed and living off their financial support. But I didn't mind being the reliable one. I genuinely loved my family and believed we had something special. Every major milestone in my life, my parents were front row center. When I bought my first house at 25, they helped me move in and stayed for a week painting walls. When I got promoted to senior account manager, they took me out for the most expensive dinner in the city. They were my biggest cheerleaders, my safety net, my foundation. That's why I'd been planning this birthday party for weeks. Not just any birthday party, but a milestone celebration that would bring together my professional life and personal life. I'd invited colleagues, college friends, neighbors, and of course family. My parents had RSVP'd enthusiastically a month ago, promising to help with preparations and bring their famous potato salad that everyone always requested. Jake's absence was explained away easily enough. "Work conference in Denver," my mom had said when I'd asked if he'd be coming. "You know how his consulting business is taking off. He's so busy these days." I'd felt a mix of disappointment and pride. Disappointed I wouldn't see my brother, but proud that he'd finally gotten his act together professionally. The party planning became my obsession. I hired a caterer, rented elegant table settings, and even splurged on a professional photographer because I wanted to capture this moment, surrounded by everyone I loved, celebrating another year of life and success. I'd imagined my parents mingling with my work friends, telling embarrassing childhood stories, making everyone feel welcome in that warm way they'd always had. I spent Friday evenings setting up, arranging flowers, hanging string lights on my deck, preparing the playlist. Everything was perfect. My house looked like something out of a magazine, and I felt this deep satisfaction knowing that in less than 24 hours, I'd be celebrating with the people who mattered most. Saturday morning, I woke up with that Christmas morning feeling. Today was my day. I put on my favorite dress, a navy blue wrap dress that my mom had helped me pick out months ago, saying it brought out my eyes. I did my hair in loose curls, applied makeup carefully, and checked my reflection multiple times. I looked good, felt good, and was ready to celebrate. The first guests arrived at 6, just as I'd planned. Colleagues from work came bearing wine and genuine smiles. College friends brought stories and laughter. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson from next door, stopped by with homemade cookies. the house filled with conversation, music, and the warm glow of celebration. But as 7 o'clock approached, the time my parents had promised to arrive, I found myself checking my phone repeatedly. 7:15 came and went. 7:30. I started making excuses to other guests. Oh, they're always running a few minutes late. Traffic from their side of town can be unpredictable. By 8 o'clock, I was genuinely worried. My parents were never this late without calling. They were punctual people who believed being late was disrespectful. I texted them, "Hey, just checking in, party's in full swing, can't wait to see you." That's when the response came that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. The text was casual, almost dismissive. "Sorry, honey, can't make it tonight. We're visiting your brother Jake's new apartment across town. Have fun at your party, love you." I stared at my phone screen, reading the message 3 times before the words actually sank in. Jake's new apartment. Across town. My brother, who was supposedly traveling for work, living in hotels, building his consulting business in other cities. My first instinct was confusion, not anger. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Maybe he'd just gotten back from his trip and found a place quickly. Maybe this was a surprise and they'd all show up later with cake and explanations. But as the minutes ticked by, the confusion morphed into something darker. I excused myself from my own party, claiming I needed to check on something in the kitchen, and called my parents directly. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I called Jake's number, the one that had been going to voicemail for months, with a message about being temporarily unavailable due to business travel. This time, someone answered. "Hello," it was Jake's voice, clear as day, with the sound of television and laughter in the background. "Jake," I managed to croak out. You're back." There was a pause that felt like an eternity. "Sloane. How's the party going? How's the party going?" I repeated, my voice getting higher. "Jake, where are you? I thought you were traveling for work. Mom and Dad said you've been in Denver and Phoenix, and I don't even remember where else. But they're at your apartment right now." Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear him whispering to someone in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. "Look, Sloane, it's complicated. I can't really talk right now. We're in the middle of dinner and I interrupted. "Who's we? And what do you mean it's complicated, Jake? I've been worried about you for months. I've been sending care packages to hotels, and Mom said you were building your business, and I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Enjoy your party." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the sounds of my birthday celebration, feeling like I'd just stepped into an alternate reality. Nothing made sense. My brother was obviously not traveling. My parents had lied to me about where he was and had chosen to visit him instead of coming to my birthday party. The golden child, the reliable daughter, the one who never caused problems or asked for too much, had been abandoned on her birthday for what exactly? I tried calling my parents again. Still, voicemail. I tried texting Jake, "I need to know what's going on. This makes no sense." No response. 20 minutes had passed since I'd disappeared from my own party. I could hear my guests laughing, probably wondering where I'd gone. I stared at myself in the hallway mirror. My carefully applied makeup, now slightly smudged from wiping away tears I didn't even realize had fallen. My navy blue dress suddenly feeling like a costume for a role. I was no longer sure I wanted to play. That's when something shifted inside me. The confusion and hurt crystallized into something sharper: determination. If my family was keeping secrets, if they could lie to my face for months and then abandon my birthday celebration without a real explanation, then maybe it was time I stopped being the perfect, accommodating daughter who never questioned anything. I walked back into my living room, plastered on a smile, and rejoined my party. But inside, my mind was racing. I was going to find out what was really going on, and I was going to find out tonight. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and distracted conversations. I played the part of the happy birthday girl, but every laugh felt hollow, every thank you for coming felt mechanical. When the last guest left around 11, I sat in my empty living room surrounded by dirty dishes and deflated balloons and made a decision that would change everything. I was going to drive to Jake's mysterious apartment and get some answers. What I found when I arrived at the address I'd gotten from our family's shared phone plan account wasn't just an apartment. It was a beautiful, expensive condo in one of the city's most upscale neighborhoods, the kind of place that required a six-figure income to afford. The building had a doorman valet parking and marble floors in the lobby that probably cost more than my annual rent. My parents' car was parked in visitor parking, confirming they were still here at nearly midnight. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. As I sat in my car working up the courage to go inside, I saw Jake through the floor-to-ceiling windows of what had to be his living room. He wasn't alone, and he wasn't struggling financially like my parents had led me to believe for years. A woman with long blonde hair was curled up next to him on a cream-colored sectional sofa that looked like it belonged in a furniture showroom. She was wearing what appeared to be an engagement ring that caught the light even from my vantage point across the street. This wasn't some random girlfriend or roommate. This was clearly someone significant. Someone who'd been in his life long enough to be comfortable in what was obviously their shared space. But the real gut punch came when I recognized her face. It was Madison Palmer, my former best friend from college. The same Madison who'd been my maid of honor when I'd gotten engaged to my ex-fiancé 3 years ago. The same Madison who'd helped me through my devastating breakup when that engagement fell apart. The same Madison who'd mysteriously distanced herself from me about 8 months ago, claiming she was going through some personal stuff and needed space. Now I understood what kind of personal stuff she'd been going through. She'd been building a relationship with my brother while lying to my face about it. I sat in my car for 20 minutes watching them through the window, watching my parents make themselves comfortable in what was clearly a familiar environment for them. My mother was in the kitchen, moving around like she knew where everything was kept. My father was sitting in an armchair, completely relaxed, holding what looked like a glass of wine. This wasn't a casual visit to check out a new apartment. This was a family dinner. This was my family having the kind of evening I'd dreamed of having at my birthday party, except I wasn't invited. I wasn't even told it was happening. The betrayal was so complete, so systematic, that I felt physically sick. Every conversation over the past 8 months suddenly made sense in a horrible new way. Every time Madison had canceled plans with vague excuses. Every time my parents had mentioned Jake's business trips with just a little too much detail. Every time I'd offered to visit him or suggested family get-togethers that got postponed indefinitely. They'd all been protecting this secret from me. But why? What had I done to deserve being excluded from my own family? What was so terrible about Jake dating Madison that they couldn't just tell me the truth? Sometimes you reach a moment when everything becomes crystal clear, when all the pieces fall into place and you finally see the bigger picture. For me, that moment came when I realized this wasn't just about Jake and Madison dating. This was about my family believing I couldn't handle the truth, that I was so fragile or judgmental that they needed to create elaborate lies to protect me from reality. Or worse, maybe they just didn't care enough about my feelings to bother including me in their real lives. I started my car and drove home, but sleep was impossible. Instead, I spent the rest of the night doing something I'd never done before. I started investigating my own family. I went through social media accounts, cross-referenced dates and locations, checked financial records that I had access to from when I'd helped my parents with their taxes last year. What I discovered was a web of deception that went back almost a year. Jake hadn't been struggling financially. He'd been making good money working for a tech startup but had asked our parents to pretend he was still finding himself because he didn't want certain people in his life to know about his success. Madison had been posting photos from restaurants and events that I now realized Jake had been cropped out of before they made it to her public social media. Most devastating of all, I found a series of photos on Madison's private Instagram account, which I could still access from when we'd shared passwords years ago, that showed family gatherings I'd never been told about. Thanksgiving dinner last year that my parents had claimed was just a quiet night at home. Jake's birthday celebration in February that I'd been told was canceled due to his travel schedule. Easter brunch that supposedly wasn't happening this year. I'd been systematically excluded from my own family for almost a year, and they'd been so careful about it, so methodical in their lies, that I'd never suspected a thing. As dawn broke through my living room, windows still cluttered with remnants from the birthday party that felt like it had happened in another lifetime, I made a decision. If my family wanted to play games with the truth, if they thought they could manipulate and exclude me while maintaining the facade of loving parents and siblings, then it was time they learned what the real Sloane Mitchell was capable of. The perfect daughter was about to become a perfect nightmare. I spent the next week acting like nothing had happened. I went to work, performed brilliantly in client meetings, and maintained my professional facade while internally planning what would become the most satisfying revenge of my life. The key to my plan was simple: if my family could maintain elaborate deceptions, so could I. First, I needed more information. I started documenting everything systematically, screenshotting social media posts, saving text message conversations, and creating a timeline of lies. I discovered that Jake's consulting business was actually a well-paying position as a senior developer at a startup that had recently secured major funding. Madison wasn't going through personal stuff. She'd actually gotten a promotion at her marketing firm and had been traveling for work, often with Jake on what they'd disguised as his business trips. My parents weren't just passive participants in this deception, they were active orchestrators. I found evidence that they'd been helping Jake and Madison plan their secret life together, including co-signing the lease on his expensive apartment and contributing to what appeared to be an engagement ring fund. The most painful discovery was a group chat between the three of them called Family Plans that I'd never been added to. Months of conversations about holidays, celebrations, and major life events, all happening without my knowledge, all carefully coordinated to exclude me while maintaining plausible cover stories. But the conversation that really broke my heart and solidified my resolve for revenge was one from 2 weeks before my birthday. Jake had written, "Should we tell Sloane about the engagement plans?" My mother's response was brutal. "Let's wait until after we see how serious this gets. You know how Sloane can be about changes in the family dynamic. She gets so intense about everything." Madison had added, "She's been weird about me dating anyone since her breakup. I think she's jealous that I'm moving on with my life while she's still stuck." My father's contribution was the final nail in the coffin. "We'll figure out how to break it to her gently. She's always needed extra emotional management." Extra emotional management. That's how my own family saw me. Not as someone who deserved honesty and inclusion, but as a problem to be managed, a fragile burden who couldn't handle their real lives. That's when I decided they were about to learn exactly how I handled being disrespected. My plan was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its execution. I would use their own deception tactics against them, but on a scale they'd never imagine. If they thought I needed emotional management, I'd show them what a truly emotional response looked like. Step 1 was financial. Through my work at the marketing firm, I had connections with investigative professionals who specialized in background checks and asset verification. I discovered that Jake had been hiding his true income not just from me but from the IRS. His consulting business story wasn't just a lie to his family, it was part of a tax evasion scheme where he was being paid under the table for legitimate work. Step 2 was social. I started reaching out to mutual friends and extended family members, carefully crafting conversations that would reveal the truth about Jake and Madison's relationship without making it obvious that I was the source. I shared concerns about my brother's mysterious financial situation with our aunt, mentioned worries about Madison's secretive behavior to her sorority sisters, and generally planted seeds that would grow into very uncomfortable questions. Step 3 was the masterpiece. I planned an engagement party for myself. I sent out elegant invitations to everyone in our social circle, including extended family, college friends, work colleagues, and neighborhood acquaintances. The invitation read, "Sloane Mitchell cordially invites you to celebrate her engagement to her long-term partner. Join us for an evening of love, laughter, and revelations that will change everything." Of course, I wasn't actually engaged. I didn't even have a boyfriend at the time. But the invitations were so beautifully designed, so convincing, and sent to so many people that my family couldn't ignore them. Within hours of the invitations being delivered, my phone was ringing non-stop. My mother called first, her voice a mixture of confusion and panic. "Sloane, honey, we got your engagement invitation." "When did you get engaged? Who is this mysterious partner? Why didn't you tell us?" "Oh," I said with perfect innocence, "I thought you might be too busy visiting Jake's apartment to come anyway. You know how your family plans don't usually include me." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Sweetheart, I don't know what you mean. Of course we want to be there for your engagement. We need to understand what's happening." "What's happening," I said, my voice still sweet but with an edge that cut like glass, "is that I'm finally learning to manage my own emotional responses to family changes." "Isn't that what you've always wanted?" I could hear her sharp intake of breath. She knew that I knew. Jake called next, his voice tight with worry. "Sloane, we need to talk. This engagement party invitation has the whole family asking questions." Questions like what I asked innocently. Questions like why we didn't know you were seeing anyone and why you're having this party, and, "Look, I think you're upset about something and we need to clear the air." "I'm not upset about anything," I lied smoothly. "I'm just planning a party where everyone important to me will be in the same room at the same time. Sort of like a birthday party, but with even higher stakes." "You understand the concept, right? Or do you need me to explain it in a group chat that I'm actually included in this time?" Another pause, another moment of dawning realization. Madison was the last to call and her voice was shaking. "Sloane, please tell me what's going on. People are asking me about your engagement and I don't know what to say, and I think you're angry with me about something." "Why would I be angry with you?" I asked, savoring every word. "My best friend, who's been going through such difficult personal stuff that she couldn't maintain our friendship. My best friend who needed space to work through her problems. You've been so mysterious about your personal life." "Madison, I'd love to hear all about what you've been going through. Maybe you could bring a date to my engagement party and introduce him to everyone." The conversation ended with her in tears, and me feeling for the first time in a week like I had some control over my own life again. But the real fireworks were still to come. The night of my fake engagement party became legendary in our social circle, though not for the reasons anyone expected. I'd rented the same venue where my parents had celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary 2 years earlier. A beautiful event space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was celebrating the end of family loyalty in the same place where we'd once toasted its strength. Guests arrived dressed in their finest attire, carrying gifts and congratulations for my mysterious engagement. I'd hired a photographer, ordered an elaborate cake, and even arranged for a string quartet. Everything looked perfect for a celebration, which made what happened next even more spectacular. My parents arrived first, clearly anxious and confused but trying to maintain appearances. They'd brought a bottle of expensive champagne and nervous smiles. My mother kept scanning the room for my supposed fiancé while my father made awkward small talk with my work colleagues about marriage and commitment. Jake and Madison arrived together, their first public appearance as a couple, looking absolutely terrified. Madison had clearly been crying. Her makeup was expertly reapplied, but couldn't hide the puffiness around her eyes. Jake kept checking his phone and looking toward the exits, like he was planning an escape route. Other family members, college friends, and work acquaintances filled the elegant space, all buzzing with curiosity about my mystery man and whispering among themselves about the strange tension they could feel from my immediate family. At exactly 7 o'clock, I stood up and asked for everyone's attention. The room fell silent, champagne glasses held mid-air, all eyes on me in my stunning red dress, a deliberate choice that screamed confidence and power. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate with me tonight," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the room. As many of you know, I've always believed that the most important thing in life is honesty in our relationships. Trust, communication, and respect form the foundation of every meaningful connection we have. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. My parents exchanged worried glances. "That's why tonight isn't actually about an engagement," I continued, watching as confusion spread across faces throughout the room. "Tonight is about something much more important, the truth." You could hear a pin drop. "You see, I've recently discovered that some of the people closest to me have been living double lives, maintaining elaborate deceptions and systematically excluding me from major life events while pretending to love and support me." My mother's face went white. Jake started to stand up, but Madison grabbed his arm and pulled him back down. "For the past 8 months, my own family has been lying to me about nearly everything that matters in their lives. My brother Jake, who you all thought was struggling financially and traveling constantly for work, has actually been living in a luxury apartment with his secret fiancée, my former best friend Madison Palmer." Gasps echoed through the room. Several family members turned to stare at Jake and Madison, who looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. My parents have been actively participating in this deception, attending family gatherings I was never told about, helping plan an engagement I was never meant to know about, and generally treating me like I was too emotionally unstable to handle the truth about my own family. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the venue's sound system. I thought tonight would be a perfect opportunity to share some of the evidence I've gathered, starting with a recording of a conversation between Jake and Madison from last week. I'd actually used a voice recording app during one of Jake's phone calls to me, and while I couldn't play their private conversations, I could play his awkward attempts to cover up the truth. As his stammering voice filled the room, explaining why he couldn't talk while clearly at home with someone else, the humiliation on his face was worth every penny I'd spent on this elaborate setup. "But here's the truly beautiful part," I continued, my voice getting stronger with each word. "While investigating my family's lies, I discovered some additional interesting information." I nodded to my friend Marcus, who worked in financial investigation and was standing near the back of the room. He stepped forward with a manila folder. "It turns out that Jake's consulting business has been a front for tax evasion. He's been accepting payment for legitimate work without reporting it properly to the IRS. Madison, as his live-in partner and joint account holder, is legally liable for this fraud." The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. Madison's face went from red with embarrassment to green with nausea. I've already reported this information to the appropriate authorities along with documentation of their unreported income and fraudulent business claims. I estimate they'll be dealing with audits, penalties, and potential criminal charges for the next several years. Jake finally found his voice. Sloane, you can't just I can and I did, I interrupted. Just like you couldn't just lie to me for 8 months and expect no consequences. But I wasn't finished. Mom, Dad, I know you co-signed Jake's lease and contributed to their engagement fund. You might want to get a lawyer, because when the IRS starts investigating Jake's finances, they're going to find your contributions to his unreported income. Co-signers can be held liable for fraudulent financial activity. My father looked like he was having a heart attack. My mother started crying. The best part, I said, savoring the moment, is that I learned all of this while planning what I thought would be a simple birthday party. You know, the birthday party you skipped to have dinner with the son and future daughter-in-law you were helping hide from me. I raised my champagne glass to toast the room full of stunned faces. So here's to honesty, to consequences, and to the beautiful discovery that the people who think they can manipulate and deceive you are usually the ones with the most to hide. Cheers. The aftermath was swift and devastating. Jake and Madison left immediately, followed by my parents after a brief heated argument where my mother accused me of destroying the family, and I reminded her that the family had been destroyed long before I found out about it. Several guests applauded. Others looked shocked but impressed. A few family members approached me afterward to share their own suspicions about Jake's mysterious lifestyle and to express support for my decision to expose the truth. The best part was watching the social media fallout over the next few days as the story spread through our extended network. Madison lost several clients when word got out about her involvement in tax fraud. Jake had to move back in with our parents when his expensive apartment became unaffordable without his under-the-table income. But the real justice came 3 weeks later. The IRS works faster than most people realize when you hand them a complete case with documentation. Within 3 weeks of my engagement party expose, Jake received notification that he was being audited for the past 3 tax years. Madison, as a joint account holder and co-recipient of unreported income, was included in the investigation. The financial penalties were severe, but the social consequences were even more devastating. Jake lost his legitimate job when his employer discovered his side tax evasion scheme. Apparently, they'd specifically included clauses about legal financial conduct in his employment contract. Madison's marketing firm put her on unpaid leave pending the outcome of the investigation, citing concerns about her judgment and integrity. My parents, who had spent years enabling Jake's deception and treating me like an emotional burden, suddenly found themselves dealing with real emotional chaos. Their retirement savings took a hit when they had to hire lawyers and financial advisors to navigate their involvement in Jake's schemes. The co-signed lease became their responsibility when Jake couldn't make payments, and they ended up covering his expensive rent for 6 months before finally breaking the lease and paying substantial penalties. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was what happened to their social standing. The story of my fake engagement party spread through our community like wildfire, and not in a way that painted them as sympathetic figures. Other families started sharing their own stories about my parents' tendency toward favoritism and manipulation. Neighbors mentioned uncomfortable conversations where my parents had made dismissive comments about my need for attention while bragging about Jake's independence. The narrative they'd carefully constructed about being loving, supportive parents fell apart when people realized they'd been systematically lying to one child while enabling another's illegal activity. My extended family rallied around me in a way that surprised everyone, including myself. My Aunt Carol, who'd always seemed closer to my parents, called to apologize for not noticing the exclusion and offered to host holidays at her house, where everyone is actually invited. Cousins reached out to share their own experiences of feeling manipulated by my parents' version of family politics. Most surprisingly, several of Madison's friends and colleagues contacted me to thank me for exposing what they'd suspected was financial fraud. Apparently, Madison had been flaunting expensive purchases and lifestyle upgrades that didn't match her known income, and some people had been quietly wondering how she could afford such luxury. 3 months after my birthday party revelation, Jake and Madison's relationship imploded under the pressure of legal troubles and financial stress. Turns out their love wasn't strong enough to survive the consequences of their choices. Madison moved back to her hometown to live with her parents while dealing with her legal issues. Jake ended up in his childhood bedroom working part-time retail to make payments on his IRS debt. My parents attempted several reconciliation efforts, including showing up at my house unannounced with apology gifts and lengthy letters explaining their reasons for the deception. But their apologies all followed the same pattern. They were sorry I was hurt, sorry I misunderstood their intentions, sorry the situation had gotten so complicated. Never once did they take full responsibility for deliberately excluding me and lying to me for months. I realized that their version of love had always been conditional and manipulative. They loved the version of me that made them look good, the successful daughter they could brag about, but they didn't respect me enough to include me in their real lives or trust me with the truth. So I made a decision that felt both heartbreaking and liberating. I went no contact with all of them. 6 months later, I'm genuinely happier than I've been in years. My work performance improved dramatically once I stopped carrying the emotional burden of managing family drama. I started dating again, made new friends who value honesty and integrity, and discovered parts of my personality that had been suppressed by years of trying to be the perfect daughter. I bought a new house in a different neighborhood and didn't tell my family the address. I changed my phone number and blocked them on all social media. I created a life that belongs entirely to me, filled with people who choose to be there honestly and completely. The most healing part has been connecting with other people who've experienced family betrayal and chosen to prioritize their own well-being over toxic family loyalty. There's a whole community of people who understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who consistently hurt you, even when they share your DNA. Looking back, I realized that my fake engagement party wasn't really about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power and refusing to accept manipulation as love. The financial and legal consequences for Jake and Madison were just natural results of their own choices catching up with them. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to participate in other people's drama and building a life so fulfilling that their absence becomes a blessing rather than a loss. I've learned that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about people who show up honestly, support you consistently, and treat you with respect. My chosen family of friends and colleagues who celebrated my real 29th birthday this year is smaller than my biological family, but infinitely more genuine. As for Jake Madison and my parents, I hear through mutual acquaintances that they're still dealing with the consequences of their choices. Jake is slowly paying off his tax debt and working his way back to financial stability. Madison moved to another state for a fresh start. My parents have become more isolated as word of their manipulative behavior spread through their social circle. I don't take pleasure in their struggles, but I also don't feel responsible for fixing problems they created through their own deception. They made choices, and choices have consequences. That's not revenge, that's just life. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that people you trusted were living double lives? How did you handle family betrayal or friends who chose deception over honesty? What would you have done in my situation? Confronted them privately or exposed the deception? Truth, publicly. Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I love hearing different perspectives on these complicated family dynamics. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama and life lessons. Share this with anyone who's dealing with toxic family situations. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for taking this journey with me. And remember, you deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, and genuine love. Don't settle for anything less, even from family. Life's too short to spend it managing other people's lies or accepting manipulation disguised as love. Until next time, keep choosing truth over comfort and never apologize for demanding the respect you deserve.